Hey everyone, today I'm creating 32 birthday cards for kids and I'm going to be using the charcoal cardstock, a couple of papers from this paper pack from Paper Trey Ink. It's called Men of Life and it is currently sold out. I think it was clearance stock so it won't be back. But I love the two papers in the middle, but not so much the other four. So I decided that I was going to work out how to use part of a paper pad that I really like to make some excellent cards. And then I'm not sure what I'll do with the leftovers. I might donate that to a local school program, and I'm sure the kids will love making some cards. I'm also using some circles from My Favorite Things and then part of the Pure Innocence collection with some of the little girl stamps and dies. Now, a lot of the things that I'm using today are from my stash that I've had for a long time, so they are retired or not available. I will put links below to everything that I can, but I'm sure that you have similar things in your stash that you are looking to use up. And so if you dig those out, if you wanted to create something similar to this, I am sure that you would be able to find the right color combination. The key thing here is I've identified a dark colour to use as my backing panel, and I have started to do this quite a bit recently, and I just find the striking contrast to the white matting layers works beautifully. Now I have these circles and I'm trying to figure out what's the right size circle to have as a feature element on the front of the card. And at this stage, I have no idea what my layout or my design is going to be, but I do know I don't want to have lots of squares of this pattern paper. So I thought I'll do circles to make it a little bit more interesting. And I hadn't worked out anything further than that. At the moment, I've got two of these circles. I'm lucky that I have the two packs that had a similar size. And I'm just figuring out when I put it through my die machine, it's a lot easier if I cut the paper down first. And then when I run it through and cut the circles, I can just discard the leftovers. So cutting these down is pretty straightforward. And at this point, you can see that both of these pattern papers, the ones I've cut and the ones I haven't, are slightly different. This one has a thinner strip and the other one has thicker. So as I'm pulling these cards together, you'll notice that sometimes I start to sort them into two piles. This is because although it's not too noticeable here in the video, the thinner and thicker strip, I match those up later in the card design to make sure that everything doesn't look a little bit awkward with the thin stripe and then the thicker. In terms of this piece here with the circles, I absolutely love this pattern paper. It is gorgeous. And I decided that I didn't want to have any leftovers, so I'm just cutting this down into, given this is 8x8 pattern paper, I'm cutting it straight down the middle into 4-inch strips, and then I'm cutting that into 4 2-inch strips. So from each piece, I'm going to get 8. And I have 4, and so that gives me 32 feature elements on my cards, and I managed to work out a way to make the right number of circles to make this work. You can see here that I'm starting to think about the design and how am I going to lay this out. With my white backing panels, it's starting to come together. And I did grab some cardstock from the side here to try and simulate and layer up with the red as well. And then I thought if I just put that red straight across the middle and then I put the circle on, it looks a little bit too balanced. Then I thought maybe I can put it sideways and then maybe that will work. And I tried a few different options. I wasn't completely sure what I was going to do, but I did feel pretty confident that these two sizes would work together on a design and I could come up with something that I would be happy with. So even though I don't have the full design just yet, I have decided that proceeding and making all of the circles and then making all of the rectangles is a good next step because I'll have them all beside me in bulk card making style. And then once I've figured out something that I like, I can create all of the cards the same way. Now, sometimes when I do bulk card making, I actually ensure that I create quite different cards, even if they're from the same paper or from a similar paper pad or collection. I try and do them a little bit different so I have a bit of a mixture. But with this one today, I was trying to get rid of paper that was exactly the same. And I thought the way that I'll make each card look different is how I put the design element on top. And you'll see that a little bit later on. If you are enjoying the video, it would be great if you could hit the like button or maybe consider subscribing. That is how YouTube knows to share videos with more viewers. So thank you so much for that. This is a little trick that I do when I'm creating paper matting layers, and that is I cut the strip the width that I need, and then I attach the paper and make sure that it's even on all 3 sides. And then on the 4th side, I can just trim that down with one cut on my trimmer, and everything will end up really nicely balanced. Now, because I pushed my luck a little bit here, and there was such a small gap between, it didn't work out absolutely perfectly. But that ended up creating a little bit of a scenario where I added some interest to the final card. And so I'll point that out when we get there. So for the moment, I'm really trying my best to make sure the borders around the edges are consistent. And it was a little tricky because it was so narrow. Now to finalize my design, I've put out 4 backing panels so I can try a few combinations and line things up a little bit differently and see if there's anything that appeals to me. And you'll see here, I don't know if you can tell, I think I picked 4 that have the thicker stripes, so you can't quite tell that they're different, but maybe a little bit later you'll be able to see that. So I'm layering them, circle on top of rectangle and vice versa. I have got them all as vertical or portrait style cards, which is kind of interesting. Seems like I didn't think to turn it sideways and try a different combination, but I feel like as I'm nutting through this, I'm like, I don't know, is it balancing? Do I have it off the edge? Do I have it symmetrical? There are many, many different ways that I could do this, but in the end, I decided that I liked the idea of a little bit of an offset. And you can see here, I'm trying to work out, will the red paper go all the way across, or how am I going to approach it? The other thing I'm doing is figuring out what style of sentiment would be best for this layout. And I've got 4 different options here that I'm trialing. Obviously, the sentiments themselves are very different in terms of the words. So I have a happy birthday, a thank you, you are brilliant, keep doing that, and you are so awesome. But for the moment, it's really actually the layout and the size of the sentiment that I'm looking at, as opposed to whether or not it's birthday or thank you, etc. The next thing I'm doing here now is I'm matting some small circles. Now, I had not originally had these as part of the design. These were the leftovers from when I did the bigger circles. And I've run through these smaller ones on my die cutting machine. And you can see some of them are a full circle because I managed to fit them on the leftovers. And some of them are a partial. But because I'm going to have these hanging off the edge of the brown paper, I can use all of those to my advantage. So here you can see I'm going to offset the bigger circle, and then I'm going to put 2 smaller pieces onto the card. And then that will mean that there's just a little bit less empty space, and it just adds the interest a little bit. You can also see here that I actually decided to offset the red. So where I was a little bit close to the edge of the matting layer, I'm going to use that to my advantage so that I don't have the strip go all the way across. It will be offset to the left also. Now this is as far as I got to decide, okay, on the left, that's going to be my card layout today. And if you remember the thumbnail or remember what it looked like at the beginning of the video, I actually did make a couple of changes along the way, but at the moment, again, it's about getting myself to the point where I've made enough decisions to progress with the next step of the project. And so by running through and adding all of these slightly offset, I've got most of the base layer ready to go, and then I'll be ready to add the circles. For the circles, you can see here that on the left-hand side, I've got the thinner lines, and on the right-hand side, I've got the thicker ones. This is what I was talking about in terms of the paper in the Paper Trey Ink Pad. Paper pad. They are absolutely brilliant, by the way. This was $2 for 36 sheets of 8x8. They've been on clearance for quite a while at Paper Trey Ink, and the different designs, every now and then they're out of stock. I highly recommend going and having a look if you need to bump up your stash of pattern paper. Definitely don't if you've got loads you can use, but if you're looking for a bit of a bargain and some high quality, I have found that these are so fun to use, and in particular, I often use them when I don't want to use a matting layer because of the thickness. You can't see through them, they don't leave any warping, and they really, really make a statement on a card. So here you can see I'm running through and sticking the partial circles. Now, some of these, I actually did go through some of the full circles and chop them in half. Now, not always in half, sometimes kind of a quarter or 2/3, so that they would have different depths. And then I'm attaching these onto the cards just so that there's two, one at the top and one at the right. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm making sure that the lines do not line up. Now, I know that seems strange, but when I'm attaching these, see how I've got the lines on the left-hand side on a particular angle? Every other one that I'm attaching is either straight up and down or at a larger angle. Just because they need to have a bit of a messy look, you don't want them to actually look like they were deliberately lined up or that they were the same. Now I'm running through and just chopping all the excess off the edge, and I have to do this on every card base because for the red you can see there that it is falling off the edge a little bit. So this is just a straightforward process of running through and trimming everything down, and for the most part everything that I cut off this is going to go into my recycling bin, because even though I like to use leftovers, there's just not too much there that I could use for another project. There's a little bit in terms of some of the circles, but they really are not going to make too much of an impact. So for me, I'm using as much as I can, and then the rest will get recycled. So I'm okay with that outcome. The next step is to colour in some of these little characters from my favourite things. Now, they've been doing these for years, and there are so many different designs. I got on board pretty late with these, and so I've actually bought quite a few of them online at clearance sales and places where there's a little bit of stock left. It's easier to find the dies than it is to find the actual stamps. So I've had a little bit of trouble finding some of the ones that I really love, but I think I have enough of them now that it's okay that I'm missing a few of the designs. And there are a few of them in the store now, like the latest releases, and I will put a link below to those also. They just are the perfect size, I find, to put on a standard A2 card base. So if you're looking for something that is easy to colour in because there's the nice thick lines, but is going to be substantial enough on a card, then these might be a great option. In terms of the Copic colouring that I'm doing here, I am not very good at Copic colouring. It's passable. I really just use two colours for each element, a darker and a slightly lighter colour, and then I put it around the edge and then blend it through. And one of the things that I do that I think, helps a lot is just adding a few little details, such as at the knees of each of the children, where you can actually see the knees, I just do a little U shape, and then when I blend it out, I do that with a darker colour, and then when I blend it out, you can actually sort of see that shadowing, and I feel like it's those small details that actually make a difference if you are a beginner. In terms of what am I going to do next, first of all, I do all of the skin tones, and you can see here that I'm doing quite a few different combinations of colours to represent different ethnicities, and I've been trying out different combinations based on kind of Googling which Copics are good for this. I don't have a huge collection, but I have enough, especially of things like the browns and the greys, that I can supplement any of the brighter colours or any of the main colour elements with some neutrals. I'm now working out what colours do I have that would be a good darker and lighter colour to blend together that will match the paper that these are going to go on. So you'll notice that most of my designs are green, red and blue, and this is literally just because I am colouring in my element as a last step to match the pattern paper. I highly recommend that approach. If you do it the other way around and you colour them in a colour that you like, or create a colour combination of something like the colour cubes or something like that, and then work backwards to try and find the pattern paper, you may not find something that matches really well. So I start with the paper and then I do the colouring afterwards. It's way easier to match it that way. I ended up using probably about 4 different stamps for the card layouts. Most of them have the little girl in sort of dresses and a cardigan, so some of them do look a little similar. This one with the balloon is super cute and is part of a double set, And for the other little girl holding a balloon that I'll use in a future project, I thought I might actually do some pattern paper piecing. So basically stamp the character onto some pattern paper and then trim that out and layer it up so that her dress, for example, is a beautiful pattern paper. I will see how I go with that. But if that sounds like something you'd be interested in seeing, then please put a comment below so I know that I should record that creation and turn it into a video in case it's helpful for others. Because I didn't want to be too overloaded with matchy colours, I mentioned before that when I picked out my colours for my Copics, I actually made sure I had quite a few browns and greys, so I had some base colours and some neutrals that would help on any project. And so for this in particular, I decided rather than adding green or a darker red cardigan, I would actually use some of my greys. So this is C1 and C3, and I'm just making her cardigan grey and her socks grey. Now, if you were wanting to give her a white cardigan, for example, I have not been that brave as to try and represent white, so I just go with the pale grey. But there are ways that you can actually kind of use the pale grey to create some shadow and leave the cardigan pretty light. As I said, I'm not an expert. I'm very basic at this, but there are many people who are excellent at Copics that you could go and look up and maybe watch some YouTube videos if this is something that you don't have experience with, but you've always wanted to try. In terms of the color combinations for the rest, I was trying to sort out how do I do colors that are going to match here. And you can see just above the other little girl, I've got a darker blue cardigan and then a blue dress. And for that next one, I decided I want it lighter. So I just colored it all in with one color of Copic. And to me, it still looked pretty cool. The shadowing does make a big difference, but if you're ever unsure, I just think color it in with just one color and it's really not going to make too much of a difference. The recipients of these cards are going to love them, and if the actual coloring is not perfect, I just think that will be overlooked. No one will mind. Now, for this little girl, she's got curly hair, and so I'm running around with my black marker and I'm trying to figure out if I'm doing swirls, does it make a difference? You can see the different layers of the Copics when you do shadows and things, but because the black was so dark, what I found is it was easier just to colour it all in completely and then not worry too much about trying to show the curly hair on such dark colours. So with this one, which is a brown, I've actually run through, I think this is still black. I coloured it in, then I ran through and did some swirls, but I honestly do not think that you can see them. Where I did the brown hair, I think you can, and so it's worth taking a little bit of extra time, but it depends on what you love about card making. Are you someone who loves making one card for someone special and you're happy to spend multiple days creating a really elaborate card? Or are you someone who likes creating lots of cards and donating them to charities and giving them away to family and friends? I think that can influence how much time you would spend on something like the Copic colouring. And for me, I like creating bulk. And I think one of the reasons I do that is because I have so many supplies. So I'm hoping to get them out of my cupboard and used up so that they are enjoyed. And it is not lost on me that maybe that means I shouldn't buy any more supplies. I should focus on using what I have, which I will say I do try and do for the most part. But every now and then there's gorgeous new pattern papers that come out that I just cannot resist. So one of the newer companies that I have started to purchase a few things from is ModaScrap. And so they have that at scrapbook.com. And their pattern papers, similar to Paper Trey, are very heavy. They're matte. And I just find them just brilliant to work with. They're absolutely gorgeous. Now you can see here again, I've done the different skin tones and I'm just trying different combinations. And then I thought I'd show you this one where I went a little bit bold with my choice and I decided to create a black dress for this one. And so the gorgeous little black dress here turned out beautifully, and I put a little red stripe across the middle part of the dress. And of course, not to forget creating some black shoes down here. And honestly, if you're doing shoes and they're black, what I recommend is do part of them black and part of them dark grey, and then that's a beautiful way to get a bit of a shadow. But I then decided to give her a little blue cardigan, which worked out perfectly. And this wasn't everything grey, red and blue, but it still matched in with the tones of the cards that I had created. So this part of the process was really, really fun. Now that I've actually finished the characters, it's how am I going to attach them? And you can see on the left, I have that happy birthday that I had already attached, which is sort of the long, narrow happy birthday. But I have this huge stash of square birthdays or happy birthdays that I always struggle to incorporate into a design that work really well with this one. Now, I created those because the little squares come out of one of the die cuts that I've used for a different video. I'll put a link below. But here I am stacking up all of the little girls onto multiple. So I highly recommend popping it up somehow with some scrap cardstock or some foam tape, because it creates a little shadow around the element, which in my view, I think looks cuter than if you just pop it straight on without any layering or any sort of kind of depth. When I got to the final one of this character, I didn't have any layers left. So I did do that one without anything behind it. And this is the little girl here with the green dress and the green balloon. But I'm going to show you the difference. It's a little hard to see, but I'll try my best. So I'm going to pause it here in a second. The one on the left has 3 layers and the one on the right has 1. And it makes it look very, very substantial in real life. So I highly recommend putting something behind it, as I said earlier. I have put another video here that I think you might enjoy. Have a great day.